I want to read this article. It's a new twist, something that I didn't know. And this is about a new book that just came out, some information in here about the movie The Godfather. I thought was interesting. I'm going to read the article and give you my perspective on it. And some of the things I knew, some of the things I didn't know, but I think this is something you'll all be really enthused to hear. Hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is very good, very blessed on this end. As always, we give God all the praise, honor, and glory for that. You might have missed me last week. I was down with the flu, honestly. I haven't been down in years in any kind of sickness, really, but it kind of got me on July 4th, that evening. We watched the fireworks, had a great time. I golfed that day, but then that night started feeling a little bit sick, and it kind of hit me pretty hard for the last couple of days, but hey, I'm back and hopefully very healthy again. We just keep going forward. And by the way, you know, last week was the Harvest Crusade. Those of you that are Christians probably know it. We had a great time. Pastor Greg Laurie just did an amazing job. Over 35,000 people showed up. A lot of decisions for Christ. It was just awesome. There was a big baptism that actually happened yesterday morning. All week long, about 10,000 people came to Christ through Pastor Greg Laurie's Harvest Crusade. So it was just a great experience. All you Christians, I know you'll love to hear that. So, you know, what are we doing today? You know, I just came across an article that I thought was really interesting, something that I was kind of aware of, but not really, and it's about The Godfather. Everybody wants to hear about The Godfather all the time. Isn't it one of the greatest movies ever? Not only about the mob, but just one of the greatest movies of all time. And yes, the mob, mafia, Joe Colombo, we were very involved in the making of that film. Some of you saw that great limited miniseries, The Offer. I thought it was terrific, fairly accurate. Sometimes, you know, again, they take dramatic liberty and things like that. But this article is very interesting, and I want to read it to you, and I want to give you my perception because that was my time. I was there, the Italian-American Civil Rights League, very close with Joe Colombo and his kids. I knew what was going on at that point in time. It was in the early 70s. I was a recruit just getting my stripes, getting ready to get my stripes in 75. So it was an interesting time. And I want to read this article. It's a new twist, something that I didn't know. And this is about a new book that just came out, some information in here about the movie The Godfather. I thought was interesting. I'm going to read the article and give you my perspective on it. And some of the things I knew, some of the things I didn't know, but I think this is something you'll all be really enthused to hear. And there's a new book coming out. It's called The Life We Chose, and it's William Big Billy Delia and the Last Secrets of America's Most Powerful Mafia Family. William Delia, they called him Big Billy, he was a guy that took over, made guy that took over after Russ Bufalino passed away in the 90s. And he wrote this book with a co-author, but a lot of stuff coming out. I want to read it. It sounds pretty interesting. Some of the things I knew, some of the things I didn't know. And I was friendly with Russ Bufalino because at the time when I was a recruit, my capo regime was Andrew Russo. And Andrew and Tom DeBella, who was the acting boss at that time while Persico was in jail, were very close with Russ Bufalino. And I would drive them to meet Russ quite often. So got to know him. The character that Joe Pesci played when he played Russ Bufalino in The Irishman was terrific. He really had him down. He must have studied him because Russ was a pretty calm guy, you know, and I thought Pesci was a terrific role for him because it was such a departure. He's always that crazy mob guy, but he did a great job with Russ Bufalino. So let me read you the article, read you some of the stuff you probably didn't know. I didn't know it, but we'll enjoy it together. And the name of the title of the article is "The Real Mafia Was More Involved in The Godfather Than Anyone Knew." Well, we know that. And it says, "The Godfather is regarded as a Hollywood classic, one of the highest grossing films of all time." We know that. But the making of this mafia movie got off to a very rocky start, as author Matt Burbeck describes in the book that I just mentioned. It was late winter of 1971 when the phone rang at ABS Contracting, one of the many cutting rooms Russell Bufalino owned in Northeast Pennsylvania. That I knew. When Billy picked up the phone, this guy William Delia, he heard a familiar voice. "Hello, this is Marlon Brando calling for Mr. Buffalino." Billy didn't believe it. He put the phone to his chest and yelled out to Russell, "There's some effing guy on the phone pretending he's Marlon Brando." He didn't believe it was him. Billy chuckled, figuring it was a prank call, but Russell looked at him with a death stare and barked, "Give me that damn phone." "Hello, Marlon," said Russell. "Yes, I'm fine. How are you?" Brando had been cast to portray Vito Corleone in the upcoming film The Godfather, which was set to begin principal photography in New York. We all know that. I didn't know that Russell knew Marlon Brando. This is news to me. I didn't know that. And in all that time with Joe Colombo and everything that I saw, I didn't know that there was a relationship there with Russell. When Godfather star Marlon Brando needed inspiration and insight on playing a mob boss, he turned to the real thing, Russell Buffalino of Pennsylvania's Buffalino crime family. I didn't know that, honestly. And all the time I spent around this, I didn't know that. Executives at Paramount Studios didn't initially want Brando, we saw that in the offer, for the role of Vito Corleone, because the actor was coming off a string of flop movies. Imagine that, a guy like Brando, who is such a brilliant actor. The studios can be pretty fickle. They're thinking of the money all the time. Who's going to bring them the money? Director Francis Ford Coppola thought Brando was perfect for a film that was the opposite of the stereotypical mob movie filled with psychotic gangsters and blood running in the streets. Up until that time, most all the mob movies, if you go back and look at the old ones with James Cagney and Edward G. Robinson, all the old ones, a lot of blood, guts, psychotic stuff like they say. And you know what? Most all of them that followed The Godfather were the same way. Goodfellas, Donnie Brasco, even The Bronx Tale to a degree. They kind of went back to that, even though they were all brilliant films. But The Godfather was different. I'm telling you, when that movie came out, guys on the street started taking a different attitude, a different character, many of them. It was unbelievable. But Brando had recently come off of several forgettable roles, and Paramount Pictures executives hated him for the part. After initially refusing Coppola's efforts to attach him to the film, Brando sought out the role and even agreed to audition to win over the leery executives. If you saw the offer, we saw that part when he actually did audition for Coppola and some of the other guys. It was great, Al Ruddy and ever. It was great. He was the only movie star among a group of actors that producer Al Ruddy signed for the pivotal roles in the film, including James Caan, an unknown, Robert Duvall, Al Pacino, an unknown, Diane Keaton, John Casale, and Abe Vigoda. Nobody knew these people. They were all new people, but boy, what brilliant casting. Well known for his meticulous preparation, Brando envisioned Vito Corleone as powerful but soft-spoken, cerebral but strong. You remember that character? He didn't raise his voice, and he got mad, remember, with Al Martino at the time. "You gotta be a man, act like a man." But other than that, he was pretty soft-spoken, but he had that aura of power about him. So attractive, when you're quiet, but people can see that in you. Great character. A family man who saw himself as a victim of happenstance, who could have been a corporate leader instead of a mob boss. I'm telling you, people, there's a lot of guys in that life that if they weren't in that life, they would have been successful in something else. I mean that. And, it's just a fact of where they grew up, who they were attracted to, what they got involved in, and something in them that allowed them to be that other person on the street. But had they not gone that direction, they would have been, pretty successful in legitimate life. No doubt about it. And I knew a lot of guys like that. But Brando needed inspiration and insight, so when he asked others tied to the production for an introduction to someone who can help him portray a mob boss, they all quietly pointed to Russell. I didn't know that. Joe Colombo never mentioned that. I really didn't know that. Even all the time I spent around Andrew. I was around Andrew every day. Never mentioned that, and I was surprised because Andrew was involved in, the making of that movie also. He was, to the surprise of many, including Billy, intrigued by the film. It was based on the 1986 book by Mario Puzo, a bestseller that sold nearly 10 million copies. Paramount had acquired the rights. But as filming in New York neared, the production ran into one problem after another, mostly from a newly formed advocacy group, the Italian American Civil Rights League. You know the story there. That was Joe Colombo's group. Initially, because it was Italian American civil rights, and the whole basis of the league was that Italian Americans were being harassed by the FBI because we had a vowel at the end of our name. And the last thing we wanted at that point in time was a major production that was going to make Italians look bad. And that was the reason the league and Joe Colombo went against the film initially. The nascent league was formed in April 1970 by Joe Colombo, the head of the New York family that bore his name. I was one of the first guys that got the call. We were picketing the FBI building, went down there every single day. I was a very active member of that league. Thought it was something that was going to help my father get out of jail. He had just went into prison in 1970, and the league was formed like a month later. My dad went in just before Easter in 1970, and the league was formed shortly after that, and I saw it as a way to help my dad out. One of his sons had been arrested for melting U.S. silver coins, Joey Jr., but Colombo claimed it was police harassment, formed the league with the stated goal of opposing discrimination against Italian Americans. That was the deal. After gathering support, Colombo held the league's first rally that summer at New York's Columbus Circle. It was a big one, which drew thousands, and that's true. And he hosted a benefit in November at Madison Square Gardens, Felt Forum. We had a big, celebrity turnout there. A lot of people performed, with tickets selling for as high as $250. That was big back then. But the league had other ulterior motives, and with it came violence. The Staten Island Advance, a small but well-read newspaper that was a staple of New York's least populated borough, had been aggressively reporting on the league's activities, which included extortion and assaults. Now, look, there was some incidents of that, I'm not going to lie, and obviously some of the newspapers were against Joe Colombo. The FBI was recruiting the papers to go after the league. They didn't want to see it happen. They were annoyed with us that we were picketing all the time. It was a mess. Many Italians from Brooklyn had moved to Staten Island following the opening of the Verrazano Bridge in 1964, which connected the two New York City boroughs. Unhappy with its coverage, the league demonstrated in front of the paper's offices and elsewhere, tough guys with picket signs. I remember, in front of the FBI building and in front of this newspaper building. One of the newspaper's delivery trucks was run off the road, burned, while two drivers were beaten, one with a tire iron, and hospitalized. Unfortunately, we're street guys, and you come out against us, and sometimes we retaliate the wrong way. That's just the way it goes. The league was also unhappy with The Godfather, claiming that the book portrayed Italian Americans in a negative light. So as pre-production began on the film, set in Manhattan's Little Italy neighborhood, the league set its sights on the movie. Absolutely. It had strong-arm merchants there into buying and displaying league decals on their storefront windows, and the Teamsters ordered its truckers and film crew members to walk away, while league members were threatening the film's executives with phone calls telling them to get out of town or else. It was chaos, Billy said. And to a degree it was. Early on it was. I remember the problems that they had, and I remember initially Colombo was dead set against it. I didn't know Buffalino was involved as much as I'm reading in this article. They started production in New York, and immediately there was trouble from the Teamsters who refused to do any work. That's true. When there were guys screwing with their trucks and knocking off equipment like cameras and anything else that wasn't nailed down. We had guys down there every day. Andrew Russo, my guy who I was with, who was a very big deal in the Colombo family. He was Junior's cousin. He was a capo. He was there. He was Carmine Persico's guy before he gave up the family, and it went to Joe Colombo. Andy absolutely loved Russell. Absolutely he did. And he was really close to James Caan. Absolutely. I think they knew each other as kids, but there was so much going on before they even started filming. That was true. Jimmy Caan and Andrew Russo, very close. Andrew baptized his son. They were very, very close. I saw Jimmy quite often down there. The film's producers sought to speak to Colombo. There would be several meetings. There were. One was at the Park Sheraton Hotel in Manhattan, where a large number of league officials were holding an emergency meeting. That's where our meetings were. They were weekly, actually, at the Park Sheraton. I remember Al Ruddy being there one day, and Colombo was talking about the movie all the time and what he was doing to make sure that the movie wasn't, making Italian Americans look bad. Russell and Billy were there. I don't remember that. I don't remember them coming down, but I'm certain that if he says they were there, they were there. And they listened closely as Al Ruddy set out the terms negotiated with the league. Ruddy said he would take out the word mafia from the screenplay, give $1 million to the league, stop selling some Godfather board game, and have a premiere of the movie in New York, said Billy. That's right from his book, Billy D'Elia. Ruddy kept saying the movie wasn't about corrupt Italians, but a corrupt society. Russell loved that. He was already pulling the strings in the background. He was the rabbi, and Colombo was consulting with him. So when Russell said it was okay, Colombo said, okay. Without Russell, that movie would never have been made. I don't know that to be a fact, quite honestly. This is really the first I'm hearing of that. Is it true? I don't know. Maybe Billy Delia knew more than I did about that, and it's quite possible he was a made guy. I wasn't at that time. I was a recruit, but hey, could be so. I don't know. But it's interesting, something I'm learning all these years later. Cutting a deal with the New York Mafia shocked Paramount Pictures executives who fired Ruddy for just making the deal, but participating in a press conference with Columbo. If you saw The Offer, that was also brought out in the movie The Offer. That was true. He did get fired. He got hired back later on. But the agreement calmed the league and paved the way for the production to resume after Russell Buffalino passed word to the Teamsters to get back to work and for street guys to stop raiding the set. And at the urging of Coppola, Ruddy was quickly rehired. So now they're saying it was Russell Buffalino that put the Teamsters back to work. I'm sure Joe Colombo had something to do with that. He had control over the unions at that point too, especially in New York. Many remained lingering in the restaurants and coffee shops, but the gangsters really didn't go away. They were near the downtown set, and several even secured plum acting roles. Now this one I know very, very well. Right after we brokered the piece, this is a quote from the book, between the producers and the league, we were at La Cantina in Little Italy, and Lenny Montana comes in with his camera lens he took from the set, said Billy. He's this really big street guy from Brooklyn or Staten Island who was down there as a bodyguard for Andrew Russo. Lenny comes in and says, look what I got, it must be worth $50,000. Now, I knew Lenny very, very well. I got friendly with him during the Italian-American Civil Rights League, and then after I got straightened out in '75, he actually came with me out to California. And him and Jerry Zimmerman were doing some deals together, and they were my guys at that point. Andrew gave me the okay for it back then, and I did a lot of things with Lenny afterwards. He was funny. Him and Jerry Zimmerman together, I've spoken about Jerry before, they were both 6'5", huge hulking guys, one Italian, one Jewish guy, both big con artists, big scam artists, but I'll be honest with you, I had a lot of fun with them at the time. So he pulls it out from under his coat and he's showing it to us, and Russell sees it and yells at him, what the hell are you doing? Bring it back right now, you idiot. And don't ever let me see or hear about you taking anything else from there. Montana was a big man, and I never seen him move so fast. This is possible. I'm sure if Russell had settled everything with the production and it was set to go, and Lenny was stealing things from the set, I'm sure Russell would have gotten pretty upset with him, and I'm sure Lenny would have ran away if Russell ordered him to do something. After Montana did what he was told and returned the camera lens, he went back to being Andrew Russo's bodyguard, but not for long, that's true. The part of Vito Corleone's bodyguard, Luca Brasi, had yet to be cast, and Coppola, noticing the hulky Montana, who used to be a wrestler. And you remember, if you saw The Offer again, it was just out of happenstance that Lenny got that role. They needed someone to step in and play Luca Brasi, and there was big Lenny Montana, said Billy. Lenny was a street guy, a hustler, absolutely. Andy Russo was close friends with Jimmy Caan and was there on the set every day with Lenny beside him. Yes, Lenny was there. So they put Lenny in the movie. He doesn't have to really speak much, but what he does, he screws it up in a scene with Brando in his office. But it looks so real, they keep him in the film anyway. Afterwards, he ran around telling everyone he was a movie star. That was true. That kind of made him, he was so proud of that role. And if you see Lenny in that role, remember, he's the guy that got stabbed in the hand. They killed him, they garroted him afterwards. But he had a good role, short as it was. The crooner Al Martino tried everything he could to play the role of Johnny Fontaine, the Lascivious crooner, and Frank Sinatra knockoff. But Coppola said no. Martino was born Jasper Cini in Philadelphia in 1927. He had several top 40 hits during the 1950s, but was forced to leave the country over an affair he had with the wife of Anthony Tony Ducks Corallo, a high-ranking member of the Lucchese family. He was the boss of the Lucchese family at one time. Now, honestly, I had heard something about that, but this kind of confirmed it. I didn't know if it was true or not, but if this is the second time I've heard it and it's in a book, and I think Delia knows what he's talking about, must have been true. It took 8 years to get him back to the United States. Tony Ducks threatened to kill Martino, said Billy, so he fled to England and stayed there. After enough time had passed, it was Russell who brought him back. Again, I didn't know this. When he returned, Russell helped Martino secure a new record contract. He released I Love You Because, big hit for him in 1963, which was a top 5 hit. He became a popular attraction on the club circuit, but he desperately wanted the Johnny Fontane role. Quote, Al is close to Russell, had been for years, and after being turned down a few times, he finally went to Russell, said Billy. Al really wanted that part, but Coppola said no. They wanted someone else. They wanted Vic Damone. So Russell says, okay, you're not making the movie. The movie's dead, finished, done. Right after that, Damone drops out, Al gets the role. But we had so many guys in the movie. We also had Jimmy Caan with us. He lived with us, ate and drank every night with us at Johnny D's. Russell even had him at his home with Al Martino. Russell cooked for them and he loved it. And I didn't know that Jimmy Caan was that close with Russell, honestly. I didn't know the Al Martino deal either, but very interesting. But Russell didn't love Marlon Brando. After he put out word that he wanted to meet a real Don, Cappy and Angelo escorted Russell to the film set on Mott Street in Little Italy and to Brando's trailer. Russell walked inside for what would be the first of several meetings. Russell spent a lot of time with Brando, said Billy. Russell showed him the ropes, how to speak, certain mannerisms, his quiet way, which Brando used in the film. Whenever Brando had a question, he'd call Russell. I didn't believe it the first time I heard his voice on the phone. I thought it was a joke, but it was him. Russell got the feeling that Brando thought he was above him, and you never do that to Russell. So in the end, he thought Brando was a punk. But Brando actually knew his place with Russell. Following a day-long shooting the big wedding scene that opens the picture, Brando, who had been drinking all day, decided to drop his pants and moon the hundreds of people in the crowd. Then he suddenly realized that many of the extras standing there were men connected to the Buffalino family. Terrified, he quickly pulled up his trousers and sent word that he meant no disrespect to Mr. Buffalino. I never knew this. It's amazing to me that, they were so close. With peace on the set, filming of The Godfather proceeded without incident, and Russell went about his other business. Now, this was an excerpt from The Life We Chose, William Big Billy Delia, and the Last Secrets of America's Most Powerful Mob Family. It's a book that's coming out now. It's published by William Morrow, and get the book, pick it up. I mean, I don't know this fella. When I think about it, I might have met him once or twice because I did meet people with Russell when I was with Andrew and Tom DeBella, but I don't remember the name. Quite honestly, I don't. This is back in the early 70s, so kind of escaped me. But anyway, thought that was interesting. So some things that we didn't know. Number one, that Lenny Montana knew Russ Buffalino. He never mentioned that to me. I'm surprised. Marlon Brando, the role that he played was kind of patterned after Russell. If you saw the way Pesci played him in The Irishman, very calm. That was his demeanor. He never really got excited. Never saw him. Very calm guy, carried himself well. Again, I thought Pesci did a wonderful job. So that's just some new things we learned about The Godfather. Pick up the book. It's probably interesting. Maybe I'll read it and do a couple other, videos from it. But very interesting. So I thought you'd like it. So how do I always leave you, people? That's it for today. Same way. Be safe. Please be safe, man. I don't even want to go into. I'm going to do a video on what's going on here in LA. People, you're not even going to believe it. You're not even going to believe it, but I'll save that for another one. So be safe, be healthy, and yes, people, I really mean this. God bless all of you. It was a really, really great week out here in Southern California at our church. It was very inspiring, very encouraging. The baptism yesterday, I could not believe it. 4,500 people. I wish I had a video if you could see the line, how long it was at Pirates Cove. Actually, in the water, they were all getting baptized. There was probably 10 or 15 pastors that were doing the baptism. That's how many people there were. A great event. But anyway, be safe, be healthy. God bless every one of you. Yes, I'll see you next time.